My name is Raj Benjaram. I'm one of the founders and directors at Uwezo Learning. And today we're going to have a guest. I'll introduce him in a minute. But before we do that, I want to kind of go over a couple of things so we'll all have a productive session. Okay. So Uwezo Learning has been in this business in terms of SATs, providing college counseling, admissions, and all that for almost a dozen years now, 11 to 12 years. And then Prithvi, we're gonna go talk to him now, obviously, but in a short introduction, way of introduction, he is finishing his 12th grade and will be attending UPenn. More about that in a minute. And then, it's going to be very informal, okay? This is not a presentation, not too many slides and all that. What we are going to do is initially, Prithvi and I will literally talk. We'll have a conversation, and he and I have been working together now for about 3 years, right? So I know quite a bit about him, but I also want you guys to get to know him. And then feel free to ask questions more or less anytime. So like I said, because it's informal, it's not a presentation followed by Q&A, you can stop anytime and ask questions. And then we'll make some closing comments and then tell you what else is coming down the pike. Okay. So this is really about, about an hour or so is what I'm expecting. So we're going to start now, as I mentioned, for maybe 15, 20 minutes. We'll just talk, meaning Prithvi and myself. And if you have any questions along the way, do ask. Okay. So Prithvi, how are you?
I'm good, sir. Good evening, sir, and good evening, ma'am, and good evening to everyone present here.
Good, good, good to see you. This is the best we can do, I guess, given the COVID pandemic and all that. So first of all, I know I have congratulated you before, but I want to do it formally in front of a lot of people. Some of them are your colleagues, or some of them are your juniors, right? So the one thing I want to point out is, as I said earlier, we've had good admissions in the past, and I think you know that. I mean, we have people that have gotten into IBs or Berkeley, Duke, Northwestern, Chicago, etc. But I think it is really the first time. Nirada, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first time that one student has gotten into three Ivies, and then what else did you get into? I think Rice, Duke. What am I missing? Oh,
Johns Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins, and then UC Berkeley. You have that MET program, right?
Yes, sir.
Which generally it's about 3% acceptance rate, right? So congratulations on that also. So let's start. I have a few questions. Obviously I know the answers, right? But this is more for the audience, right? So you went to DPS, or you are still at DPS, right? So it's a CBSE school, right? Did you consider going to IB at all, ever? Like
Yes,
an
sir.
IB?
So, firstly, thanks a lot for congratulating me. And I go to Delhi Public School, which is a CBSE school in Hyderabad. And I never really considered going to an IB school because, like, when I had to make the decision, I had already been attending CBSE for 10 years. So I just decided to go with the flow and attend a CBSE school. But if I were to look back, I think IB would have been a good decision too, because like students in IB, like after they graduate, they can transfer their IB course credits to university and they can bypass some of the introductory courses.
Right.
So I think IB credits would be really helpful.
Right. So you did that. I mean, that's a good segue into, instead of that, when you're doing CBSE and we advise the same thing, you end up taking APs, right? Which are competitive or just as good or better than the IB HLs, right? So what APs did you take?
Yes, sir. So before coming to Uwezo, I didn't know much about the AP courses, but Raj sir and Uwezo told me about APs and they kept me updated about the registration and timeline of the AP exams. So I took AP Microeconomics and AP Calculus BC last year. And this year I'm taking AP Physics, Mechanics and Electricity and Magnetism.
Right. You took AP Computer Science, or did you?
I was supposed to take it, but I mean, in the online exam, there was a power cut during the exam. So,
Oh my God. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's too bad. Okay. All right. So, when did you decide that you would want to study abroad? I mean, was it a decision made early on, or was it a no-brainer, or was it a lot of thought that went into it? How did you decide you would even want to go abroad to study?
hmm So, in ninth grade, I was planning on preparing for the IIT JEE exam. And initially, I enrolled into FITG's weekend classes. And so initially, I was thinking of studying in India itself. But
Mm-hmm.
later on, like as time went on, I realized that my interest was not only in computer science, but in a variety of disciplines. And studying in the US would give me the freedom to combine multiple disciplines and give me the freedom to explore a variety of disciplines.
Right. So, one of the things that interested me or impressed me was that you seem to have figured out sometime early on that you wanted to do technology plus management, right?
Mhm.
So, how did that come about? Where most students, so you decided to do a combination degree, right? So
Mhm.
how did that come about? Because mostly, and I think I said this to you when I first met you in 10th grade, right? When you told me that, I said, wait, you look so much like a techie guy, right?
Yeah.
So how did that decision come about that you would want to study, a combination of like where you're going to study, right? Management and technology. How did that decision come about?
Mhm. So yeah, as you mentioned, I was initially always interested in technology, especially computer science, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, to be specific. But
Mhm.
as I started joining more leadership positions in my school, and as I started like implementing and working on my own computer science projects, I realized that I wanted to pursue technology entrepreneurship because,
Mhm.
like, although I create software, I just don't want them to stay only on my laptop. I want it to reach people and I want to make a positive difference. And for that, I need the business skills to
Right.
grow my product and connect with people and to understand my customer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. So one of the things I know that kind of got you into the AI space in particular was when your dad was diagnosed with glaucoma, right? So can you tell us about that a little bit? What happened, how you felt, and then how did you go about, and how did you introduce yourself to the technology, and what did you do after that?
Yes, sir. So I mean, I was always interested in tech, but not specifically AI. Like I attended a lot of Model United Nation conferences, and in those MUNs, I always took part in technology committees or science committees, and I was always passionate about mathematics and science, and I tried like studying higher level texts on my own, but and I tried pursuing some basic Python and Java programming, but in 10th grade, my family member like was diagnosed with an eye disease, and later on, like after speaking with the doctor, we realized that it was a misdiagnosis, which could have been treated earlier.
Hmm.
And because I was like up to date with the technology field and technology advancements, I knew that AI could do something about it. I didn't know the specifics of AI, but I decided to take it up and learn machine learning on my own. And there were many online resources like Coursera and Stanford's free open courses, MIT's free open courses. So like I started delving deep into those courses, and yeah, it really fascinated me. And after that, I I contacted one of the course instructors, and then I learned about the specific models to treat diseases. And there was this computer vision technique called convolutional neural networks,
Hmm.
which took in images of the eye, and it tried to provide an early diagnosis of the eye disease. So that was my first project involving machine learning. But I also
Hmm.
continued working on different projects. Like I got two more internships later on in the field. One was with a healthcare AI firm based in the US, and one was an AI firm which provided solutions to other companies, which was based in India itself.
Hmm. That's good. I also remember one of the things you did at Uwezo was you wrote an app to predict like what the next SAT score a student would get based on the past 10 or 12 marks, for example, right? So this all this kind of I'm thinking kind of added to your curiosity as well as your experience,
Yes,
right?
sir, definitely. So initially, when I was still learning about the basics of machine learning, Raj sir told me about using machine learning to predict trends. So I thought of using basic machine learning models and mathematical modeling, basically to use previous tests data of the students to predict what a student would score in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was working on that project, I knew nothing about website development, but Raj sir also encouraged me to develop a website for the backend application. So I also started learning a bit of website development, and I think that was my first website development project. And later
Mm-hmm.
on, Raj sir also encouraged me to teach the basics of machine learning to others at Uwezo because many people seemed interested at Uwezo. So so that was a learning experience for me too, because I think the best way to learn something is to teach it to someone.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that really helped me.
Okay. Interesting. Now, I want to get to some of the extracurriculars that you did, right? Which were I thought were kind of unique, right? Because a lot of people ask, right? So I mean, not a day goes by when some parent or a student doesn't call me, and they're usually already in 12th grade, and they say, I want to get into one of the Ivies or, Stanford or Berkeley or something like that, and it breaks my heart to say, yeah, you have good grades and you have a good SAT score, but unfortunately, it's going to be an uphill battle, right? So, in your case, what made the difference? You think? I mean, of course, you had the grades and you had a good SAT score and all that. What do you think made the difference in terms of your application?
Yes, sir. So like you always mentioned to me that I mean there's so many there's thousands of schools in India, and each school has a topper. So there's
Mm.
thousands of toppers applying to universities abroad. So you always told me that grades were the minimum, but people needed something in the resume to make the difference. So I think the things that made the difference in my application were my extracurriculars and the fact that I took AP examinations, although I was in a CBSE curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And I think very few people do that. So I think that also helped me stand out. And my essays to help me stand out because many people do have similar test scores and similar profiles. So essays really helped me too. And yeah.
Yeah. So there are three. You did a number of projects, right? You just mentioned a couple of internships also, but the
Mhm.
one I wanted you to spend a little bit of time is the Agra. What did you end up calling it? Agra app or?
Yeah, I call it Ganga's agriculture.
Yeah. So, see, a lot of times, right? So, and people, the audience should understand this. The solutions that you find to problems, right, are real world problems. So that's exactly what colleges look for is, are you solving a problem that affects a lot of people, right? So if you solve a problem that affects only a handful of people, it's still good, and you may have put a lot of effort, but what they're really looking for is almost a global kind of problem, right? So tell us about, how did you come about even thinking about the, solving the Agra? You kind of fell into the problem, right? You were not going out looking for it. And this is how most things happen, right? Although sometimes you can say, I want to solve, I think healthcare is one of the biggest things now where AI and machine learning are playing a big role, but that's not the only place, right? So how did it come about and what did you do? If you could tell us about that, that'd be helpful.
Hmm. So yeah, I mean when I my grandpa is from a village in Karnataka, and I regularly visit my grandpa's place during vacations or once in 2 months. So in 11th grade, yeah, towards the end of 11th grade, I think I had visited my grandpa in Karnataka in his village, and one thing I noticed was that a lot of farmers were just dumping their agricultural produce by the roadside, and that was really surprising and horrifying for me because there's a great food shortage in many countries, including India. But at the same time, the farmers were disposing of their produce. So that really shocked me. And then I just wanted to understand the problem more out of curiosity. Initially, I knew nothing about the problem, so I started doing my own internet research and also talking to the farmers there, talking to my grandpa and his friends there. And then what I realized was that like after harvesting the crop, there's a lot of post-harvest costs involved, which includes the storage of crops and and ensuring that the crops don't get eaten by rodents or other pests while they're being stored, and also and then also transporting it to profitable markets, and and one more important factor which does not depend on the farmers is the price they're offered. Sometimes the middlemen try to exploit the farmers. They tell them that their crop is not up to the mark. They tell them that there's a lot of demand. I mean, there's a lot of supply, so there's less demand, and they try to offer lower prices to the farmers, and they try to make money off their innocence and their lack of knowledge. So that's what I got to know. And I mean, the prices being offered for for the pomegranate and other crops in my grandpa's village was pretty low. So I wanted to know if these are really the market prices in the areas around that village. So I began cold calling supermarkets in Bangalore and nearby towns, and I tried visiting them or asking them about the prices, and eventually I found a market in Bangalore who were willing to buy these crops from my grandpa's village. So initially, I contacted some truck drivers and some people who would harvest the crops, and and that's how I got started with the agricultural business. We initially started off as packaging the crop and transporting it to profitable markets so that the farmers would get better prices and wouldn't be at the mercy of the middlemen.
And the next step, if I remember correctly, you were going to use AI to find out, I mean, automatically find out where the best market would be, right? And logistically also figuring out how to get it from point A to point B, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another thing was Donazon. Can you tell us about that a little bit? Because I think that was also good, especially the part about integrating that with Amazon.
So, Donazon too, like I didn't go looking for the problem, but I fell into the problem. So like I did a lot of community service, and during one of the community service events at an orphanage in Hyderabad, like during one of the events, like one of the kids at the orphanages asked me for a camera, and some of them asked me for an SD card and some textbooks and some groceries and all of that. And although we donated some amount and some groceries and books, we didn't have enough to like um, meet the needs of the people there. So I wanted to do something about it. Like although we didn't have the resources, I felt like, I mean, India is a big country, so someone would be willing to help them. So I like started digging deeper into the problem. I contacted more NGOs and more donors, and then eventually I developed a website, a web platform to connect donors and the NGOs in need. And one more problem was donors usually didn't trust NGOs that much because there's a lot of fraudulent NGOs in India. So in my web platform, Donazon, what we do is we check each NGO using their registration number to ensure that they're legitimate. And we also provide a link to their website so that the donor can like verify it themselves. And we also wanted to make it a seamless process for both the donors and the NGOs. So one more feature of the website is that Amazon wish lists are embedded in the website. So the donors can just simply click on the wish list and then just simply find the item which has already been asked by the NGO. And with one click, they can make the donation. They don't have to enter the address of the NGO. They don't have to enter any bank details of the NGO or anything. They can just make a simple one-click donation.
Right. So instead of buying it for themselves, essentially they're having it shipped to whatever NGO they want to do that to. Okay. So that's great. So that's again looking at a very big picture, right? So just so the audience also understands, I mean, all the problems you have looked at are basically large scale, I mean, global type issues is what you've looked at, right? Okay. Um, when did you, or what do you think, what would you tell the audience in terms of when should one start planning for college? I mean, what grade should they be thinking about? Hey, look, I want to do this, I want to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so yeah, again, Raj sir and Uwezo always told me that it's never too late to start and it's never too early to start. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I would like to say. It's never too early or never too late to start. But I would say that the earlier, the better. And initially, like, you don't have to have your life figured out or you don't have to have your resume figured out. I would suggest that one should pursue their passion or at least find their interest or major or at least their goal. Like, for example, I was interested in technology entrepreneurship. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I kept pursuing since ninth grade itself. So I think one suggestion from me would be to pursue whatever you like consistently and try to become the best at the things you like, and then eventually declare that as your major.
Mm. So the things you have done, not only the APs, but the several projects you have done, we talked about a few. I mean, that seems like a lot of work, right? So did you have to make any sacrifices? I mean, in terms of your quote unquote regular life as a teenager, etc., right? So I would think you would have had to give up some things, right? So I mean, is that what it takes? I mean, to be able to build that type of profile, is it that challenging? And that's the kind of commitment it needs to do that?
Yeah, I think it is pretty challenging. I mean, especially during the application process, like towards the ending of my 12th grade, like when I had to like sit down and actually apply to the universities, I think I
Mm-hmm.
spent like 15 hours a day writing my essays and doing my
Mm-hmm.
interviews and getting all the documentation for like
Mm-hmm.
3 whole months. I think I spent like 15 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, even before the pandemic, I think I actually spent a lot of hours in my day either studying or working on my extracurriculars or doing something. But I actually enjoyed a lot of the things, and it was definitely a growing experience for me. And I actually had fun learning machine learning and going
Mm-hmm.
out and talking to the farmers there, and then trying to
Right,
start my own business. So it was pretty enjoyable for me. Yeah, I
right,
mean, there were some sacrifices, but I did go to parties or meet my friends and all of that.
right. So it's possible to balance both, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
What is the impact, in your opinion, what impact do essays have on your application?
hmm So yeah, like Raj sir mentioned, there's thousands of people with A grades and 1500 SAT scores. So I think essays are really important, especially this year and last year because last year and this year were test optional. So
Mhm.
although even if you had 1600, even if you had 100%, you would still need to demonstrate your excellence in other ways. So I
Right.
think essays are really important, and it puts a voice to your application. It gives a human touch to your application and
Mhm.
helps the university get to know more about your goals, your aspirations, and all of that.
Right.
And and Uwezu really helped me a lot during the essay process. And Raj sir always told me, I think since like the start of the 12th grade itself, like from April of 12th grade, he always like encouraged everyone in Uwezu to get started very early on essays because they take a lot of time from brainstorming to putting our thoughts down on the application and going through multiple drafts.
Mhm.
And I applied to many universities. So I think Raj sir looked at least 50 of my essays and he gave me a lot of feedback and constructive criticism.
Mm. Yeah, I remember you used to send things like 2 a.m. in the morning or something like that, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was an interesting time. I enjoyed, obviously working with you. Okay, a couple more questions. So, do you have a role model? I mean, is it like somebody within your family, or do you look up to somebody in the industry kind of stuff? Does it even matter or help if you look at somebody and say, I want to be like that person?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think personally, I think my mom is my biggest role model. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, she's really hardworking, and then she always gets things done no matter what. Even if she's sick, or even if she's really busy, or even if she's working like 12 hours a day, she always gets things done, and she always keeps me motivated. And I mean, I think I learned my work-life balance from my mom. So my
Yeah,
mom is
that's
definitely
important.
my biggest role model.
Okay, excellent. So I wanted to ask you about, APs, as I don't know if everybody here knows, but it stands for Advanced Placement courses where in the US, right, it's part of your regular curriculum, meaning just like I take math, I take AP math. I take history, I can take AP history. So it's a 6 month, 1 semester type of course. You have a teacher, you have regular tests and all that. So obviously it's a little easier. Even then, most of the kids that we deal with in the US, they say, oh boy, APs are hard and all that. So it begs the question then, Prithvi, so in India there are no classes, right? It's all self-prep. How did you manage that? That might help the students, on the call understand how to prepare for APs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I personally, I mean, I went to a CBSE school, and I personally think that CBSE covers more topics than the AP courses there. Although
Okay.
although the question types are really different, I
Mm.
think CBSE covers um, broader topics, but I think
Mhm.
AP goes more in depth.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think APs are pretty easy to prepare for. There are some standard books like Princeton Review and Barron's, which is
Mhm.
what I used to get 5 out of 5. And
Mhm.
yeah, so doing those books and doing practice tests and doing previous year question papers, that's all I did. And I think many new questions too are similar to the previous year question papers, which are officially released by College Board. So I
I
think
see.
doing those papers and just checking out review books like Princeton Review would help a lot.
But you took microeconomics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which you were not taking in school.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you do that? I mean, that I would think you're covering, like, as I mentioned, right? In the 6 months in the US, I'm guessing like the book is probably 500 pages. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
throwing something out there, right? So how did you manage that when you were not taking that course at school, but you still had to do that and do well in the school academics also? How did that? What kind of effort that does that take to do well?
Yeah, so I think I usually study in the last minute. So even for my AP Micro,
Okay, I hope the kids didn't hear that. No, just kidding. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, everyone has their own style of
Mm-hmm.
studying, and
Mm-hmm.
studying at the last minute works out for me because I'm usually doing a lot of extracurriculars and stuff. So I think I like to prioritize things,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so I started preparing for microeconomics like 1 week before the exam. I did some online search to find out what the best books were, what the best YouTube channels were,
Mm-hmm.
and I watched, and then I bought the Princeton Review book, and I bought one more book called Five Steps to Five, and I finished
Mm-hmm.
them in like 3 days. And after I just started like grinding, and I mean, I just started taking the previous year practice questions and marking the questions which I didn't get, noting them down, and then understanding why I didn't get those questions, and then just digging deep into the topics.
Right. All right. Okay. So I think that's a good place to, Vamshi, you said you had a question. So let's open this up to the audience. Go ahead, Vamshi, your question.
Yeah, thank you, Raj. And Prithvi, congratulations to you. God bless you. I wish you all the best in your career ahead. So your
Thank you.
profile has a lot of diversity, so pretty impressive. So I wouldn't actually miss out a candidate like you if I were the admissions officer.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I just want to ask a couple of things. So you have actually done a lot of activities and enriched your profile in a better way. So are essays the only means of actually providing the credentials of what you have done and articulating what you have actually accomplished? Because I heard that the essays have a limitation on the number of words that you basically have to submit for. So that is one part of my question. Second one is, was there any interview with an admissions officer or anybody, and how would you prepare for such kind of interviews? And the third and last one, I don't want to actually take over, commandeer this. Third and last one is, let us say I do certain activities like you do. What makes me feel that my profile is up there for the top universities? How can I how can I make sure that, or how can I be sure that my profile belongs to the top tier colleges or middle tier colleges or lower tier colleges? So what are the kind of indicators that I need to take before applying to the colleges? These are the three I have. Thank you.
So if you remember all three, Prithvi, the first one was about essays, right? Are they the only way to articulate who you are? I mean, Go ahead.
Yep.
Answer
Thanks a lot for asking me these questions. So, essays are not the only way to authenticate your activities, but essays are definitely, a way to express your passion and give a human touch. Applications also have this thing called the additional information section, which is a 650 word extra section in which you can write anything. And in that section, I usually put links to my websites. I kept links to my certificates so that they know that what I've done is real and I'm not lying about things. So I kept proof in my additional information section, and I worked for some companies like, for example, the healthcare AI firm. And so what I did was I requested my employer to provide me a recommendation letter. So even that would authenticate that I actually took part in the internship and what I learned in the internship. So my employer's word would have some weight in the application. And Raj sir also kindly provided me with a recommendation because I've been working with Raj sir for the past 3 years, and I also worked with some projects, some OVESO projects like mathematical modeling to predict scores. So essays are not the only way to authenticate your activities. And there's also an award section, and even in the activity list you have some words. You'll be given some word limit to talk about your activities. And I think there are actually two main applications. One is the common application, the other is the coalition application. And I think the coalition application actually gives you more words to express your activities. So if you want to go up, if you want to express your activities in depth, I would suggest going for the coalition application. And after doing this, and after all these application segments, there's also a space in the application for you to upload your resume. So you can also use the resume space and activity list and the essays and the recommendation letters and the additional information section to authenticate your activities.
The second question was, were you interviewed? Did you have to interview with any of the universities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was interviewed by a few of my universities. Only one of them was with the admissions officer, but the interviews were very chill. And I think both alumni interviews and admissions officers interviews, they were pretty similar. So I think one can prepare for both the interviews in the same way. If you do a Google search, you'll find a list of the interview questions on your goal university's website itself. For example, when I was applying to, like, for example, Harvard, I think Harvard would have a list of some interview questions. So you can, and each university has their own interview tips. So you can definitely go through their interview tips and interview questions and prepare for some general questions.
And third one question, I believe, was, which is a very good question. And after you answer, I would like an opportunity also. But he was asking, okay, if I do, whatever you did, right? Not exactly the same things, but similar things if I do, then he's saying, how do I know that I'll have the same level of success that you did, right? In terms of admission. So what would you say to that?
Mm-hmm. So what I tried to do in my high school was I was really passionate about computer science and entrepreneurship, and my goal was to become a tech entrepreneur. So I tried to pursue my passions at the highest level possible, and I was also really interested in science, technology, and math. So I took part in competitions and in some exams and in some science research competitions. I got all India rank 3 out of around 2 lakh people, and I got like top ranks in multiple exams. So I think and even my extracurriculars, for example, my website, which I mentioned, it was able to connect with 100 non-profit organizations all over India, from Odisha to Hyderabad to Bangalore and many different states. And so basically, I tried to pursue my passions to the highest level possible. If there was a national competition, I would apply for it. If there's an international competition, I would apply for it. And for computer science, I tried pursuing research, and I also tried getting some internships. So that's what I tried to do.
Yeah. So Vamshi, so my answer would be chase passion and not admission. That's one of the sayings we have at USO. So yes, there is no guarantee, Okay, so what's happening is, if you look at luxury cars, right? So you have Audi, BMW, Mercedes, etc. I mean, this really not, not owning any one of those. I can't speak out of experience, but generally speaking, like, there's not a whole lot of difference between all these, right? So they're all trying to come up with something that sets them apart. Similarly, here, people are becoming smarter, people meaning parents and students, right? So they're all doing, oh, I believe this guy did this and he got in, so let me do this kind of stuff, right? So at the end of the day, what universities want is somebody, or, a resume that stands out, and then they need to see that passion, right? And then, as long as you chase your passion and then you articulate what you have done in your essays and all that content comes from your heart, I think your chances of getting in will improve, while still there is no guarantee per se, right? So I think Prithvi said it well. Whatever your passion is, take it to the limit, right? So the more you do, or the most that is possible to do in that fashion or in that passion, and if you can do that, I think your chances will improve. And essays are one way. You have your grades, right? And you have your SATs, and then for CBSE kids, they may want to do APs. So all these things combined is what colleges are looking for, some unique candidates, right? Just because how we're looking for good universities, you'd be surprised to know how hard universities try to find good students also, right? In fact, I think, for that reason, Prithvi basically is getting his undergrad education for free, right? Because they want to make sure he comes to their university and not somewhere else, right? So that's how good universities are also looking for excellent students, just like we're looking for outstanding universities. Did we answer your question?
Yes, Raj.
Okay.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. Are college courses alternative for AP? Yes and no. So basically, APs are college level courses. Okay. So if you search carefully, and you may want to work with a knowledgeable counselor on this. So if you pick a college level course, it doesn't automatically say or mean that you get college credit, but some of them will give you that. Okay. So if you choose carefully, yes, you can do that. Another question is, Priyal Sharma, congratulate you, ask if that someone scores percentage in 80s, what are the chances of getting into Ivy or top colleges of US? The second question is, do they give need-based scholarship if selected? Okay, so first question is, if the scores are in the 80s, what are the chances of getting into top universities?
Personally, I always got about 90%, and my average is around 95. In 10th boards, I got around 98% with 100 in math and 98 plus in science, social, etc. So I always have been trying to get all A grades. Yeah, so even if you get 80% in like 9th or 10th, I think it's okay if you can bring it up to like 95 or something in 11th and 12th. So it's still not too late. And if you can improve your score, that definitely helps. But I mean, with 80%, maybe your chances are less, but you probably still do have a chance, because if you check your university's class profile, you will find that there are some students who got in with 80%. So yeah, people do get in with 80%, but I think your chances would be more if you got a higher score.
Yeah. So the second part of his question was, do they give need-based scholarship? So maybe I can answer that. So it depends on, one of the big components will be whether you're a US citizen or not. Okay. So scholarship, there is a merit scholarship, which doesn't affect if you're a US citizen or not. But if you're looking for a need-based per se, or if you're looking for some kind of loan and all that, if you're not a US citizen, it is slightly more difficult. Okay. Another question, I'm in ninth grade and I want to go to Columbia, but I don't know right now what my passion is. I've tried quite a few activities, but none of them interested me. So any tips on finding one's passion? That's a very good question. So especially in ninth grade, right? That's why I asked you that you seem to have figured it out a little early, right? So this is a damn good question, I would say. So many ninth graders, they don't know what they want, right? So do they have to at this point find their passion per se, or what do you think they should do before I jump in and give my 2 cents?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, one thing which I read online to find a passion was to do nothing for like 1 week or 10 days, and then eventually on the 10th day something would make you want to do something, and that is your passion. So that's one thing which I read about online. But yeah, I think the way I found my passion was I just kept doing a lot of things. Like initially, I wanted to be a tennis player, then I wanted to be a soccer player, and then I wanted to become a doctor, and then I wanted to become an astronaut and an actor. So my passions kept changing, but one thing which was constant was that I wanted to build something and I wanted to reach people. So that was my goal, rather than my passion. I would say that was my goal, and I always
Mhm.
wanted to build. I always wanted to create something, and eventually I stumbled upon coding and computer science because that I think coding is the most accessible platform because most of the languages are open source and there's many resources online to get started with coding. So I stumbled upon coding, and I really liked tech's capability to help me build things. So I'd just say like keep exploring a lot of things, and one day you'll probably find something.
Yeah. So what I would like to add is that a good mentor is probably, or a guidance counselor, which is what USO does, right? Might also be able to help you because, yeah, ninth grade, you may not know your passion, but talking to experienced people, they might be able to bring out some of the things which, may not have been obvious to you, right? But yeah, that's a good question. I think that's about all you can do is to try different things and then ultimately try and figure out, the famous question, what do you want to do when I grow up, right? Our CGPA in AIDS, business experience, tech entrepreneurship projects, and open source enough for 100% scholarship for MS. So that's a master's. After undergrad, if you have to go, I think the answer is going to be the same, right? So in terms of generally, universities are looking for people that stand out. But yeah, I would say for MS, your experience, your CGPA still counts, okay? But your experience and internships, and if the more you have done hands-on, will probably help you that much more, right? 100% scholarship, definitely possible, right? And some kind of stipend. And then for MS, generally the citizenship doesn't enter into the fray most of the time, right? So they will give you some kind of research assistant job or teaching assistant job or something to cover your tuition and all that. But yeah, generally speaking, what you have there is probably fairly accurate. Okay, is 12th marks or SAT mark is looked for admitting student? I'll answer that. So yeah, it's a combination of things, your academic scores, right? 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th for the US in particular. Your SAT, then anything else like Olympiads or APs, followed by your whatever activities you have done outside the classroom, by which I mean the things that Prithvi talked about, his agribusiness, his Donazone and his internships and all that. So those matter quite a bit, right? But yeah, grades do matter, and so does SAT. In fact, they matter. They're the first ones that matter, but they're not sufficient. You need all these other things as well. Next question: how many APs do you recommend to take? I don't know. You took what, 3 or 4?
Uh, yeah, I'm taking 2 every year.
Okay, so I guess he's doing 4. That may depend, right, on what you want to study, etc. But generally, USO would say probably 2 is minimum. 3 to 4 is probably good if you can handle it. Okay. Sri Kalash, hello, congrats on your achievements. Do we have to write IELTS examination to check English proficiency, even with IB English being an Indian citizen? So let me answer that. So generally speaking, if you're not a US citizen, you have to write IELTS or TOEFL, right? And I know a lot of schools are kind of confusing students by saying if you take IB or something like that, or IBHL, you don't have to, but we have come across many situations. In fact, 1 or 2 situations where even US citizens were asked for IELTS because they did their schooling here, right? So I would say the safest thing is, and because the exam is so simple to do, just go ahead and do it instead of, taking any chances. Okay. Next question, can you suggest some competitions or exams a gap year student who's interested in physics can take part? Can you answer that, or do you want me to take a shot at it?
If
So
I
he
was
wants to take a
interested,
gap year and is interested in physics. So what could he do?
yeah, if I were interested in physics, I would try to, I mean, firstly, I would try to do some of the undergraduate physics by myself so that I can get some concepts. And after that, I would start emailing physics professors at universities and ask them if I can obtain a research position, because yeah, that's what I would try to do if I was passionate in physics. And I would also try to take part in physics Olympiads and try to get accepted to the National Physics Olympiad team. And there's also many summer programs. I don't know if they'll apply to a gap year student, but there's many reputed summer programs like the Summer Research Institute in the US, and I think Yale also has an astrophysics summer program.
Yeah, there are many institutions in the US who focus on the gap year students, right? So you spend the entire gap year working with a particular organization, and then they will figure out what you want and all that kind of stuff. But that is only in the US for the most part. Okay, next question. Which examination would you prefer, SAT or ACT? I'll let
Uh,
you answer that, your preference, and then I'll give a general answer.
So I took some ACT practice tests, and I took the SAT 2 times. So I think the difficulty level of ACT is comparatively easier, and ACT also has an additional science section. I would suggest ACT if you're confident that you can finish the test really quick, because ACT gives you less time per section. But the SAT, although it's more difficult, it gives you more time per section. So if you're a quick reader and if you can finish things quickly, then I would suggest ACT. If you're comparatively slow like me, then I would suggest SAT.
Yeah. Another thing to think about is if you're good at math and if you like math, right? And remember the SAT or ACT for that matter, the difficulty level or the knowledge level you need is only from up to 10th grade, right? So if you're good at math, and then 50% of the SAT is dependent on math, right? Whereas in ACT, it's only 25%. So if you're good at math and you can practice, you can get half the score is taken care of, 800 or 1600. And then English, you can figure out, because that you have to do anyway in ACT also, right? ACT has more, I would say, critical thinking and reading comprehension type questions than SAT does. So if you're good at math, then we would say go with SAT. And if you really not only dread math, but if you're not so sure, then try ACT a shot. So USO does have a way of helping you figure it out, by the way. Okay. This is a question only for you, because I can't answer this question. Do you recommend working with college counseling consultants? What areas can they help with?
Yeah, so the reason I decided to work with Raj sir was because, first of all, I go to a CBSE school, and most of the students at my school are aiming for Indian institutions. So, so for official guidance from a counselor, Raj sir was really helpful, and I didn't know much about the application process either. I was just pursuing my passions, and I didn't know much about the timeline, and I didn't know that there was a I didn't know that there were interviews. I didn't know about AP courses. So Raj sir really helped me. Um, he told me about the components of the application process, and then he kept me up to date with all the requirements like financial aid, scholarships, AP courses, and other things. And even if you don't have a passion figured out, Raj sir has many events like in the POM program every Sunday. People meet up and they discuss about different topics in different fields. So that might give you exposure to different fields and help you figure out your passion. And Raj sir also gives some projects to students interested in some fields. Like, for example, I was interested in math and computer science. So I worked on a project with OSO on using mathematical modeling for predicting exam scores. So that also was really helpful. And in the end, Raj sir also recommended me to universities, which I think played a role too in my application process. So I would actually recommend OSO.
Okay. So another question, another MS type question, I guess. So this person has a 3.75 out of 4 in undergrad, 3 internships, and more than 8 leadership positions. So for highly ranked MS colleges, is this good? General answer is yes. Specific answer, we'd have to look at what are those things that you have done and which colleges are you talking about and what is the major. But generally, it looks pretty good. Okay. Now, here's a damn good question. Why is there so much hype about the Ivies?
Okay, so personally, the reason I applied for Ivies was because they give a lot of financial aid. They're one of the most endowed universities in the US, and they have high amount of opportunities. And what I wanted to do was computer science and technology. So going to um, going to University of Pennsylvania would give me exposure to many entrepreneurs and leaders in the technology field. It would help me expand my network, and the research opportunities at Pennsylvania were amazing. I think they spend millions of dollars on their research, and they also encourage undergraduates to take part in research. And I'm really interested in computer science research, so that's one of the major reasons. And the university which I applied to had a combined dual degree program in business and technology, and I think only this university and a handful of other universities have this program. And they also give a lot of funding to entrepreneurial activities. And I'm interested in tech entrepreneurship. So that would benefit me a lot. And that's the reason I applied to Ivies.
Yeah. What I'd like to add is that, I mean, great question, by the way, whoever YB is, but one thing you have to understand, unlike in India, right, where you have the IITs or IIMs, all these, top schools, and then the second tier is, there's a big drop, and then beyond that, it's a black hole, right? You really take a really big leap down. In the US, I agree with what Prithvi has said. However, there are schools that may be ranked number 35 or something, who also have a huge endowment, and they will also have a lot of resources, right? So one thing to remember is you don't have to go to an Ivy League school to be successful later on. Okay, so anything in the top 30, top 35 universities, resources wise, for the most part, are similar, but you may not get the scholarship or the financial aid that Prithvi got from public universities, because they tend to have a little less money. Okay. However, from a quality perspective, the same. In fact, the people teaching at UCLA or Boston University may have done their PhD at UPenn or Harvard, right? So from the teaching perspective, etc., the resources perspective, infrastructure, it's all the same. The one difference you will notice is that, and then Prithvi will find this out pretty soon if he doesn't know already, is that everybody else at Penn is going to be like him, right? They're going to be top from their respective universities or respective high schools, which may not be the case in the, some school that's ranked 35 or something. However, there will be about 20-25% of students who are like that, but you will also have students who are probably not in the top 1%. They may be in the top 5% of their high school or top 20% of their high school. Okay, so you can still do well. In fact, I think like Prithvi said, I think Rice, Duke, he got into those. I think Duke also gave you full ride, right?
Yep, they even covered the flight and all those expenses.
Really, yeah. So only thing is, it wasn't the management and technology. It was
Yeah,
science. So
yeah.
he didn't want to go there for that reason, right? But yeah, there's a lot of private schools with a lot of money. They don't have to be the Ivies. Okay. All right. Somebody said, can you tell us what your SAT score was?
Yeah, so on my study score is 1550 with an 800 on math and 750 on English.
Yeah. So that's good. Although I would say that's kind of probably the average at Ivies,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of people do get 1600 or 1590 and all that, but
Mhm.
remember, that's one component. But we would say, yeah, 1550 or above is a competitive score. Okay. Next question. Congrats. How did you choose which colleges to apply to as a rising senior? And after receiving acceptances, how did you choose your final university?
Yeah, so I was always interested in Penn because they had this dual degree program called the Management and Technology program. In fact, I tried applying to the Management and Technology Summer Institute in 11th grade itself. And yeah, so I tried looking for universities which have my field of study, which is combined computer science and management. And not many universities had that. I think only a few had it, including UC Berkeley, Pennsylvania, New York University, University of Southern California, and a few more. So I applied to these universities. And also Raj sir and Ovezo helped me decide which safety universities and target universities and reach universities to apply for. And they helped me while I was looking for colleges to apply to.
Okay, good. Does my CGPA matter according to which university I'm studying right now? Because it's difficult to score compared to few others. So this, Diksha, you are a high school student or an undergrad engineering type student? Undergrad, okay. Does my CGPA matter according to which university I'm studying right now? So that's also a good question. Generally, by now, right, after many years of so many people applying to grad school in the US from India, they know how to figure it out, okay? So in a particular university, does it matter? It doesn't. It doesn't, right? So they know how to take your GPA and then they will do their own evaluation. Very rarely, extremely rarely, they ask you to actually go to a third party service which converts your Indian grades into a US grade. But that's, I've only seen that like once or twice out of hundreds of grad school students we work with. Okay. More questions? How are state syllabus percentage converted to CGPA by state syllabus? State syllabus as in, oh, here, like Fiji type things. Okay. So they're not. That's what I was just telling you right now. So generally they don't do a straight conversion. There are tools online and stuff, but we recommend not to waste time on that. So, sometimes the transcript that you get from your own school here, high school, sometimes says, this number equals A, this number equals B, but all the universities in the US have enough experience now how to figure out, how to determine what that means. Okay, so Diksha says, no, I mean in India itself, many universities evaluations is different from others. Unfortunately, can't answer that question about India in particular because we're 98, 99% focused on universities abroad. Okay, how to search for summer internships online for universities. So summer internships, I think yours was a special case, right? You going to or getting that internship in San Francisco, right? So that
Yeah,
would be difficult if you're not a US citizen.
yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of summer programs online which you can apply for. For example, MIT has a lot of summer programs. And if you just do a quick Google search, you'll get a list of summer programs. You can just search for top summer programs for high school students in the US, and you'll find many summer programs. And as for internships, I would suggest you to network a lot. Ask your friends, ask your family members if they know someone who can get you a job. And it might be difficult to find an internship. So I suggest that you create a LinkedIn profile and start connecting with people you know, and you can connect with alumni from your high school. You can connect with alumni from your dream university, and then if you find someone who has similar interests, you can just message them and ask them if they're free for like 10 minutes to set up a Zoom call with you, and you can introduce yourself, and in the end you can just talk about your interests and ask them if they can guide you and give you an internship.
Yeah. So Diksha continues to say, so like government universities have tougher evaluation standards than private. Do you mean in the US or here in India? Diksha? India. Again, I'm afraid I really can't answer that question about India because India, for the most part, right, a lot of them have entrance exams and all that, which is not the case in the US. And our specialization, as I mentioned, is mostly about getting people out of India, right? So yeah, I'm afraid I can't answer that, at least not right now. Has COVID made more difficult or easier to get into a higher ranked university? I'm applying for 2022.
Yeah, I think COVID has made it like much more difficult applying to universities. I mean, even before applying, many extracurriculars have come to a halt because of COVID. Like I used to play soccer for my school team, And after COVID, I was not able to play soccer. And the competition is much more this year. Like I think the big universities received a significant increase in the applications. And I think Harvard and Columbia's acceptance rates went down to 3%. So yeah, I think it's getting difficult every year.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. During
I had a doubt. Like actually, my doubt was that while I'm applying for MS abroad, like they look even into the CGPA that I scored in my undergrad, right? So in India, like in undergrad, like different universities have different evaluation system. So some of the universities, like they have a tough evaluation. So our CGPA kind of drops down when it compares when it is compared to the private universities.
right.
So that is what I.
Yeah, no, I understand your question. So that I can answer. So as I mentioned, right? So now I don't know if the university you have in mind here or the undergrad that you're going to, but many times they will also have a conversion scale, right? So saying, sometimes 80 might be an A, some other times 78 might be an A, right? So generally what they look at, the universities, the MS admissions officers they are looking at your CGPA, but for masters in particular these days, many universities prefer some experience. You had some experience before you apply for masters, right? So your internships, and if you have 1 or 2 years under your belt in terms of working for, a good company, and then what you have done there probably will outweigh those 1 or 2 points you may lose in the CGPA conversion. Okay, so I would definitely recommend doing something like that before moving on to masters, not only business, but even in engineering. They want people to have had some experience. The more experience, I would say a couple of years is a good number. Okay. Can you suggest some cities where I can find colleges according to my choices rather than ranking? Other than college board? Well, yeah, we can. UASO can do that. So if there are many criteria, right? I mean, in fact, this is a good point for us to make, that we really don't look at rankings, okay? Because rankings are very subjective. If you look at certain rankings, one university ranks 7 and in other one it may rank 4. So we don't really look at that as one of the most important factors. But depending on your requirements, geographical needs that you may have, the college size, internship opportunities, and as Prithvi said, funding opportunities, any number of factors can be taken and should be taken into account. So that is something UASO can definitely help. Okay. What is an alternative activity to stand out in the application process to universities if you don't have any internships? So this is for going after high school or going after undergrad, Shivani? You're a high schooler? After high school, okay. So the internship concept in India is very rare. Okay, so in fact, if you notice that people finish their bachelor's and then they're called interns, right? So in the US, if you're in 10th grade, sometimes even 9th, but typically 10th or 11th grade, there are many internship opportunities. So that is part of their culture and process. In India, it's very difficult to get those internships. And then, as I mentioned, Prithvi was able to get that in the US, probably because one thing, I think he was, he went after it, which is, good for him. But the other thing is he's also a US citizen, right? So that makes it slightly easier. So instead of that, what we do at UASO is, in our college prep program, we create opportunities or we create projects which are as good, if not better, than doing an internship, right? So that's how you have to do it. You have to try and stand out, and there are many ways to do it. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, for US citizens, yeah, you can, well, then you can just Google and search for opportunities in the US, right? There are any number of job sites, so, which specialize in high school interns and all that. And then you can apply and you can do it. So if you're a US citizen, definitely that's going to be a lot more easier than if you're not a US citizen. Okay. Most of the universities are test optional, as SAT really required. So I don't know if you would say most, A number of them are test optional. So the way to look at it is like this, right? So as we just said, there is no entrance exam in the US, right? They look at all the things we talked about, and Prithvi mentioned many of those things, right? So if you have a good SAT score, it's always good to submit it. Okay. So it's gonna only gonna help you, it doesn't hurt you. And some of the universities are saying that, we won't even look at it, but that's a very small minority. Many of them are saying it's optional. You want to give it to us, we'll look at it, right? And if you don't want to give it to us, that's okay. They don't hold that against you. However, then the rest of your profile should be awesome, right? So in a way, if you have a good SAT score, that will mitigate your other aspects of the profile. Okay. What role sports play in application if I'm a national level player? Depends on the sport. What sport is it?
Also, I would recommend that you start contacting the sports coaches of your university. If you, actually universities have a different recruiting timeline than the application timeline. So usually, like people who want to like join the sports teams, they start recruiting in 10th grade itself in the US. So I think like if you're in 10th grade or higher, you should definitely contact your goal university's sports coach. You mentioned rifles, so I think you should contact that coach for your university. You can send him your awards, and you can send him a video of you actually playing the sport, and you can tell him that you're interested in the sport, and you can mention to him that you're interested in being recruited for sports. And sports recruitment in the US is a completely different process.
Yeah, and it's extremely competitive also, right? So that's why I asked you what sport. So rifle, I think you will probably find some universities. So one of the first things to find out is which of the colleges or universities even have a team, right, that participates in that. So then, like Prithvi said, it's a different process and probably in some ways more strenuous. Okay. One of my friends is shy to ask his doubt. Are internships good CGPA? Open source like GSOC and MLH enough 100% scholarship for MS? Another MS question. Um, I don't know. I keep seeing this 100% scholarship. So I don't know about 100% scholarship, but yeah, there's a good chance if you have, good GPA, right? I would say at least 8 out of 10, and a lot of internships and some experience. And then if you have created some project, through your internships or working, right? If you've done some great work and recommendation letters from your internship coordinator or, manager, boss, whatever, right? And if you worked at a company and the recommendations from them, which I think, Prithvi, you got even that as part of your recommendations, right? So they will definitely help, and you will get scholarship. Depending on the school, of course, the higher the ranking of the school, the more challenging it will be to get that, right? So when Trump was there, he cut funding to universities, but hopefully Biden will correct that course. Is it all right to work in a startup as an internship, or are known companies better? Well, depends on the work. I would say work is more important than the reputation of the company. However, you have to understand, if it's in India, there is a lack of trust from the universities when Indian students say they've done this or that kind of stuff, right? Unfortunately, and that we brought that upon ourselves, right? So many people produce 20 certificates where only 2 of them are legitimate or something like that. So look at the job, and then if you can articulate well in your essays and all that, then the work is more important than the company. Because of COVID, exams are being canceled. How do universities look at it? That's a damn good question. The answer is we really don't know at this point, right? What we do know is that ultimately high schools here, they have to give a final score, the 12th grade, right? So they have to give a predicted score when you apply. And then, when you actually join a school, you have to give the real score. So they have to figure it out. And once CBSE and all these guys figured it out, I heard this morning in the newspaper, within the next 2 days, CBSE apparently they said to the Supreme Court they'll figure it out. So we'll see. Prithvi, can you tell your experience in the USA? So that's the internship they're talking about, Prithvi, San Francisco.
Oh, okay, okay. So yeah, the company is based in the US, but it also has offices in India. And my internship was during COVID, so the internship was virtual, and I didn't go to the US. So
Right.
yeah, the internship was I mean, it was a great learning experience. I got to work with the leaders in the company, and I also was mentored by like people who had PhDs in machine learning. So I definitely learned a lot about machine learning. But the interview process was really difficult. Like I had to go through a few rounds of the interview process, and I had to like yeah, pass some tests and explain my things to the interviewer. So yeah, both the interview process and the internship, I think both were a learning experience.
Yeah. What extracurriculars can we do or required for a good resume? So let me answer that. There is no specific set of extracurriculars that you can do. It goes back to the question that the first gentleman Vamshi asked, right? So the bottom line is they're looking for somebody or some resume that stands out, and they won't tell you what that is, right? That's up to, like, and I appreciate the question Vamsi asked, because what we see as counselors over the last 12 years, so Nirada ma'am, who's also on the call, what we see is that a resume that's better than last year's resume does not get into the same school that the last year resume did, right? So it's a it's a moving target, because as I said, people are becoming smarter, students are becoming smarter, parents are becoming smarter, and colleges are getting better and better resumes, right? So the only way to look at that is, look at each person's passion, where you want to go, what you want to study, and then, without, putting a plug for USO, but the experience that we have, then we could probably help you figure out, along with grades and good SAT scores, what else do you need to do to have the best shot possible at whatever schools you're looking at or universities. How gap year is considered by universities, good or bad? Um, so gap year, it depends on what you do during that gap year. Okay, if you take a gap year and do nothing, obviously that's not going to be viewed positively, right? But if you take a gap year and make good use of it in terms of preparing for college, or even if you want to go, build houses for the poor, and that's what you wanted to do, kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. It's neither good nor bad. It all depends on how you make use of it. When did you start focusing on planning your so this is for you, Prithvi. When did you start focusing on planning on your extracurriculars?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I always wanted to do computer science, and then I also wanted to do entrepreneurship. So my majors were computer science and business, which I figured out in like 10th grade. But then I never really like sat down and planned my extracurriculars. Like, I mean, things just happened. Like, for example, when I visited an orphanage, I found a problem and I tried to use computer science to solve the problem. So it's not like I really planned my extracurriculars, but I just like whenever I find a problem, I try to solve it in my own ways, and I try to like pursue my project or my passion to the highest level. So I think my extracurriculars just happened as I found problems.
Right. Is SAT, taking SAT alone better or SAT with essay? I think these days hardly anybody is asking for the essay, so I think you can skip the essay part these days.
Raj, if I can add,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, College Board is not offering essay at all. They just changed recently, right?
Okay.
Along with the subject stats not being offered, right? So yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. Your job has become easier, Sujay. Okay, so when will be the next SAT date? So there is a lot of discussion about August, but it's still not confirmed. But definitely, I think October has to happen. Otherwise, that's going to be a huge problem for many kids. Okay, so I would say October. Why should you take APs in high school? You don't have to take APs in high school. Remember, you're trying to impress the universities with your application. So you're saying, even though I'm only a high school student, I'm taking APs, which are actually college level courses, right? So I'm showing universities ahead of time that I'm a motivated student and I can handle college level courses even though I'm still a high school student.
Also, like if you like, for example, if you want to pursue a computer science major, and if you take APs for calculus BC, which is usually a required course for computer science majors, you
Mhm.
can like skip that course. You can transfer your AP credits to the university you're gonna attend, and you can skip that course. And if you like take enough APs, you can even skip an entire semester worth of courses, and that would also save you some money. And you can also directly skip to more advanced courses.
Right, and save time, and especially if you're paying international tuition, that could add up to a lot of money. In fact, in the US, even though they get to pay less tuition, lower tuition, what a lot of people, a number of them do is, while in high school, they finish almost 1 year of college by taking all the AP courses, right? Okay, can you take both ACT and SAT, and can you apply AP while in? Oh, can you take AP while in IB? So the first part question is, don't do both, do one, right? Very rarely, and then I guess that's where a good counselor or good organization like UASO can help you figure out which is a better test for you. But doing both, you don't have enough time to do that. Okay. Can you take APs while in IB? You don't have to take APs while in IB, but if you want to, again, it's all about how unique you want to be, then you could do that. Does the recommendation for taking AP courses also apply to IB students? Same question. So IB, HL subjects are generally considered equivalent of APs. So that means you get 3 APs automatically, right? But you do have to score in your IB board exam. You must have at least a 5, sometimes a 6 to get the college credit. And when you do APs, the maximum score is 5, and you should get at least a 4, but some of the universities say 5 out of 5 to give you credit. If you take SAT twice, do you have to take an average? So they do what's called a super score. They'll take the better of your scores. So if you did well in math the first time and English the second time, they'll take the better of those 2 scores, and that's called a super score. Does taking APs help in admission? Yes, it does. Okay. I think we should probably start wrapping up. Anything else, Prithvi, you want to tell your juniors now? 1 year juniors. Any words of wisdom? Because what I have noticed is that you have done a lot of hard work. Right, I've been with you, and then ma'am has seen you, Neerada ma'am has seen you, etc. So, I mean, it's hard work, right? And that's one thing that I'd like to emphasize to the students on the call. It's not easy. I mean, everybody wants to go to a good school or a top school, but it is a lot of work. If you're prepared to do it and you have proper guidance, then it can be done, right? But it is going to be a lot of work. Okay, that's one thing I would say. So, Prithvi, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would suggest that you figure out your passion or your major or your goal early on, and I would suggest that you consistently pursue whatever you're interested in to the highest level. And if you do that, automatically the awards will come in, and you'll get the recommendations, you'll get the extracurriculars. So just pursue what you're passionate about, but to the highest level. And if you find a problem, try solving it. Initially, you might not have the knowledge to solve the problem, but if you like keep digging in, maybe after a month or maybe after 2 months, you will eventually at least get some knowledge to solve the problem you're interested in, and also take the initiative to do things. For example, like the web platform which I worked on, like a similar web platform didn't exist before. So I tried to take the initiative and do it by myself. And even during model UNs, like initially, like I was afraid of speaking and I had a lot of stage fear. So I tried to push myself outside the comfort zone, although I didn't like speaking. And eventually now I like speaking. So I would say try new things and pursue your passion, take initiative and push yourself outside the comfort zone.
That's good advice. Taking GED benefit in admissions if one has low grades in high school. General education benefit in admissions if one has low grades. What is GED in this case?
I think it's equivalent to a high school diploma.
High school, right? Yeah. Low grades in high school, you will go and take GED. If you already have a high school diploma, then Because the GED is the equivalent of the high school diploma, right? So I'm not sure I understand the question. Yeah. So even in India, they have some alternatives, to high school and stuff, but it's not practiced that often here, right? But grades are extremely important, followed by your SAT, et cetera, et cetera. And then they're mandatory that you do well in those areas, but they're not sufficient to get in. That's the key, right? So like we talked about, what probably got Prithvi into all these schools is not just his grades or SAT score, which not everybody, yeah, almost everybody else applying to those IVs will have, but it's the activities and the enthusiasm and the initiative that he showed in doing all these things outside the classroom that probably helped him. All right, so let's wrap up here, Prithvi. I want to thank you for your time. And again, I'm so happy for you. It's not often that people get into so many of their dream schools.
Thank you, sir.
Right? So as I said in the past, yeah, we did have people getting into Berkeley or Duke or Northwestern, et cetera, Cornell, but not the same student getting into so many. And I think it's well deserved. Most of the credit goes to you, right?
Thank you, sir.
And your hard work. So good luck to you in the future. And I guess if there is nothing else, then we'll call it a night. Okay. Good night, everybody. Nirada, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, congratulations, Prithvi, and you deserve a big pat on the back.
Right.
And I guess a lot of parents and students are there, so we thank you for the time and explaining what you have done, right? So really appreciate your time and all the best.
Thanks a
Okay.
lot, man.
All right. Okay, guys, take care.